Hello and welcome to the Digi-Tools and Accrual World podcast, brought to you by the digital disruptors who have now launched the Digital Disruptor Awards. This is the place to go for all your app news, app insights, and I guess any information that's happening in this digital accountancy space in the UK. I am your host, Ryan Pearcy, and I'm joined by, once again, John, Toon and Indi Tatla. John, how is life up in the frozen wastes of the north, mate?
It's pretty bleak. It's like a nuclear winter up here, Ryan, as you can expect. Although Lee's made it up here, we've made it to Manchester, and we had a good little session quickly running around our venue for our awards and just checking out, making sure everything's hunky-dory and ready for when we kick off in a couple of weeks. So yeah, good times, and just slightly manic and busy for me at work as well.
I understand that, mate. And I have just been watching the Fallout series, and that is exactly how I do imagine the north to be. So hopefully Lee has been fighting off the demons, has been moving northwards.
We just don't have the one-piece boiler suits, that's all.
Yet. And Indy, how's your beautiful self?
She's very well. I'm taking good care of her, making sure that she's getting good sleep according to the Whoop. Even introduced, Ryan, magnesium to my diet, but not through the pill, actually. It turns out that if you rub magnesium into the soles of your feet at night, it gives you a better night's sleep. So I'm just going to put it out there. There's probably some science around, but it really does work. I don't know if it works the same way if you rub it into your head, as you obviously are following the challenge. May help. But that's how good I'm taking care of her at the moment.
That's how I absorb all my nutrients. It's through the top of my head. And I think that's what all build men do. That's what we get the most use of it from.
That's why you all look so sexy with the, it's all kind of there, like just tiny and just glossy looking. Honestly, I think that if you really did take a social experiment on, Ryan, I would like it if you were to massage every vitamin into your head every day for a month, and let's just see what happens.
Every vitamin? That's a lot of vitamins.
I mean, the thing that Ryan does is, have you seen The Big Lebowski? When they're bowling and they have those like little bags that you kind of polish your bowling ball, and that's what Ryan does with his head. He's like that. That's why his head's all shiny and looks nice. It's not because he's rubbing anything into it.
All we need to do is, just before you do that, add a few vitamin drops to the top and get a butt.
Can we just, given that Ryan and I are in this podcast and we're men of science, can we just confirm the fact that, there's a reason why people don't rub things into their skin and it doesn't get absorbed, because your skin's there as a physical barrier to stop your body absorbing like dangerous things. So rubbing magnesium into your feet doesn't go anywhere apart from your bed sheets.
I don't appreciate you gender shaming me by saying men of science.
We're both men. It's a fact.
I think I should also point out that John's statement of men of science is without any not education, but things to back that up.
You did a degree in science.
Come on. Any evidence of that whatsoever?
And I did at least one GCSE in science. There you go.
I saw your school reports. You shared them. It said John must try harder. When he tries, he's very good.
That was the biggest mansplaining flag I've ever heard. We are men of science, and we're going to state to you why you are wrong with absolutely no backing whatsoever.
It's true. Otherwise, every time you go to the beach and rub sunscreen into your body, you'll have factor 50 flowing through your veins.
I thought that's what I did have. That's how it works. It just protected the inside of me and the outside of me.
Oh my God.
Anyway, I think on that point, let's kick off app news.
Kicking off this week, Intuit has reported strong fourth quarter and full year results. They grew total revenue to 16.3 billion, which is up 13% year on year. And in the quarter itself grew total revenue by 17%. They seem to go into a lot of detail in terms of like the entities themselves that have shown growth, but not specifically into the territories or geographies. So there's a good, strong set of results that are presented for TurboTax Online, Credit Karma, in terms of growth numbers, the consumer group, and how that spreads across their kind of ecosystem of different companies within the Intuit group. But I don't see anything else beyond that applies to the UK. They talk about their growth per share. And I think that there's probably some more still to come in terms of a full report. But Ryan, John, you'll probably know a little bit more about this.
Yeah, I've not been able to see anything UK related. What I did find interesting from this release is that their biggest growth came from the small business self-employed sector and their online ecosystem revenue. So similar to, I guess, Xero, getting revenue from its app store, Intuit is doing the same with its online ecosystem. Biggest growth of 20%.
We've got some new updates from Sage Intacct as well. So first off, they have rolled out an AP automation tool, which is available worldwide in the product. This will be familiar to anyone that's used Dext or any number of OCR products, but this is now rolling out, and apparently it already has widespread adoption in the US. With a approximate processing time saved of half, and then they said it saves businesses over $100,000 annually by reducing manual data entry and improving accuracy. And they said that in the US, businesses are already processing over 10,000 bills per month using this innovative tool, which is interesting because if you do the maths on that, that's 83 cents per invoice. And they said it's cut processing time in half. So God only knows who the hell in the US is processing these invoices and stuff, but if it's saving 83 cents every invoice, I can't even figure out what's going on because that must be outsourced to somewhere in the somewhere cheap. But anyway, it's in the product, it's there. If you use Intacct, of course, it's worth looking at, but there are better options out there in the market, which will plug into Intacct as well. And then they've also just changed some of the functionality around global users, essentially. So this is like user access controls and some additional features that they've rolled out. So we've got the ability to do some time entry stuff and approvals around that with some AI built into that process. Some automations around employee expenses, some additional help around report writing, and then the ability to extract taxable payments, which is particularly useful if you're doing stuff in Australia. They've got some other updates for France and Germany, which I'm not going to go into in too much detail. And then they've also done some additional integrations for things like affordable housing units and for writing checks if you're in the construction industry, for example, if you're still using checks, of course, and also added some insights into how you do revenue recognition and being able to automate and integrate that into the reporting side of that revenue recognition. So taking, say, like an invoice and splitting it over a period, that's all there.
Oh yeah, the AP automation is probably the most interesting one, I think, out of all of that, and the one with the biggest global spread. So yeah, timing wise interesting, but good to see that they're constantly developing the toolkit.
Can I ask, is that a new sector, or do they often go into new sectors with Sage Intacct? Is that something very new for them in terms of bringing on a partnership and targeting a particular sector?
No, they've gone into multiple sectors before, and I think we've talked about two on the pod in the past. I'm trying to think. Construction, I think, was one.
Construction.
And didn't they do something like religious, not religious sects, because that's not the right term I'm thinking of here, but for
they've done something
accounts.
around, sort of like church accounting or something.
Yeah,
it was, wasn't it? And charities connected to that.
Very niche.
Oh, I do remember the churches. Yeah.
Cool. So I've got some information from Xero. They had Xerocon Nashville last month, and lots of announcements, but mostly US focused, as well as in Canada. A lot of changes around bank feeds, about bank reconciliation. So that new thing that we've had in the UK, where you can now put the end of period figure in and reconcile to a date. The traditional bank reconciliation has been announced in the US as well. And they've got some things around localized charts for accounts. The main two things I thought were interesting was they have released SMS, or soon to release SMS invoicing, first in the US, but then will go to all other regions. So you'll be able to send invoices directly to customers' phones through text message, and then for them to pay via Apple Pay or Google Pay. So I guess making it really easy for the small businesses that send a lot via text. They've done a similar thing to, I guess, HubDoc over here, integrating to Bill over there. But the big thing we've all been waiting for in the UK is what they're doing with what they call Xero Inventory Plus over in the US, which was formerly Locate Inventory that they've been bringing into the US version of Xero. And that's now been fully released in the US with a new Amazon integration. No announcements about how they're rolling that out in the other jurisdictions. And they actually do make a key statement here that they're excited about the future in the US and Canada for this product. So they have not made any statements about moving this into other jurisdictions, which is frustrating for us because having a really good inventory-based, I guess, element inside the likes of Sage, QuickBooks Online, or Xero would be very helpful.
Do you think this is fair to say that it's kind of Trade Gecko-esque in its implementation?
It is, yes. They are stealing features. As I guess John alluded to, we talked about this in a recent podcast. If you've not checked that one out, please do listen to it, because we talk all about how Intuit brought the Trade Gecko, brought it into the system, and then kind of upgraded customers onto that, making more money from it over a period. And I believe Xero are probably doing the same with Locate and making it work in the jurisdiction that Locate was built to work in. At that point, they'll look to then transition it into the other jurisdictions. But it's just the timing of it. I think it's the main area I would want some movement in the UK. So hopefully, once it's proven, it will quickly translate over into the UK market.
Yeah, I mean, I think if Xero do want to keep it in the North American market, that's incredibly short-sighted because there's definitely a gap in the market for something that sits between the very basic functionality we've got in Xero at the moment and then products like Unleashed and Sim7, like you say, we've talked about. So we can go into that in more detail at another time.
I had something on Xero, and it is another price increase, but this time for the US market. So they're increasing their prices as of October 27th, 2024. And it looks like the subscriptions will increase from $15 per month to $20 per month if you're on the early plan, on the growing plan from $42 to $47, and the established plan see the cost rise from $78 to $80. And if there's a discount, then that will obviously run to the end of the discount, after which period they will move to the new subscription prices. So they've got a template that they're pushing out to all of their US market to say how they can communicate about that. But I don't know, have we had any uproar from the US market on the price increase? Because that seems like something that if it happened over here, we would absolutely lose it. And Twitter would be, and LinkedIn would be a nightmare for the day. The feed is covered.
I haven't seen anything. Have you, Ryan?
No, I think the main problem in the UK recently was they changed the entire structure with packaging up the add-ons. And I believe that actually what they've been doing in the UK matches the current setup in Australia and the US. So this is more of a standard price increase. The biggest impact I've seen is, that early one, the starter package, right, which is jumping by, a third? It's quite a big price increase. And I would assume that's because they did penetration pricing early on. But I've not heard uproar. But admittedly, the Xero market is a much smaller element of the whole US, where Intuit, is 90% of the cloud-based finance market over there.
It is, but also the American market's a much more adult market when it comes to pricing. They might be way behind on technology, but they're all about the value and the benefit, and they don't complain when the product pricing goes up because that's just a part of life, and they can get over it, unlike us in the UK.
Much more litigious as well, so could be a small thing to do with it.
They'll just sue them. Is that what we're saying? They'll just sue them. We'll moan, and we'll get in a queue to moan, but they'll sue them. Right, well,
absolutely.
I've got one final thing from Xero. We always like to look at what's come out in the App Store, what's new, what's interesting. And last month, there was a lot happening. There were so many we couldn't actually reference them all that hit the UK. But in August, there's only been 2 that have come out in the UK App Store. One is an instant bank pay facility called Atua, and the other one is a HR tool called Personio, probably Personio. And both of them are, I guess, things that aren't, moving the needle. So I assume that most of the app developers are just on holiday in August.
Amazing. Well, there are clearly app developers not on holiday in August, at least for Dext, because they've just announced a feature, a surprising feature to come out finally, because I was part of the receipt bank. I can't remember what it was called now, but basically where a bunch of us, customers were all brought together. We went down to London, had a very nice lunch, etc., and asked about features that we would like to see in the product. And surprisingly enough, this was one of them. And this was 8 years ago, maybe 9 years ago. But we now have supplier statements in Dext Prepare ready to be utilized. There's some nonsense from Max Whiteley about why this is really important, which is not really relevant in the press release, but there's some good stuff in here in terms of like how it works. So basically, usual kind of thing, you upload and scan your supplier statements. It'll go through the invoices that they've got on the system and credit notes, and it will flag up anything that's missing in terms of whether that reconciles, and also anything that is missing, you can then actually have an automated email that goes off to the supplier to request the missing information, and then that will then feed through into Xero as well once you've collected that information. There are some limits in terms of volume, but it is included in the standard subscription. And once you go over those limits, you'd have to pay extra for it. But I think, in my experience at least, supplier statement reconciliation is really important in certain industries. Construction is probably a classic one, and probably food and beverage as well. But outside of that, you rarely see supplier statements anymore. And so, certainly, even less than you did probably 8-9 years ago when it was requested by all of us who were down in London. So it's good to see it. It's good to see it in product because it brings one to parity with other players, but it feels a little bit late in the day, to be honest.
But this is another example of the new CTO bringing everything in that was asked for so long ago and moving the product forward. So, it's once again, tip your hat to how Stephen has actually made a big impact and driven the product forward. Really still excited about where it's going.
Yeah, I know. I'd agree with that, and I think it's good. It is good to see that they're bringing these, product parity up, in terms of what they're doing. But also, we need to see more from Dext. We need to see more innovation, more coming out of it. It's no good giving us like products that we can get elsewhere, or products that are, like I say, probably less relevant nowadays than they ever used to be.
Something a little bit more light-hearted that I sort of feel like is up our street a little bit, even though it's not app related. A business that was selling what it seems like a hair system has been ordered to pay a VAT bill of more than 100,000 after failing to prove that its hair loss system should be Xero rated. So there's a business that has lost the first tier tribunal, and it was found to, I think it was not paying, well, you guys will know this better than I will, but Ryan, I don't know why, I think of you when I think of this story. I just wanted to check in on you for a moment, because in this, they say that the reason why they said it was Xero rated was because they considered hair loss to be a disability, which is very controversial.
Wow.
That it's not. HMRC said no. If it's some people, yes, but most people, no.
It is like, because I don't think you hairies can really appreciate. It's a common term. Can appreciate the impact of rain. Like, because you've got this, self-defense mechanism from it, whereas we feel the full force of it. So yeah, it's disability, right?
I would have thought surely if that's your argument, hail is worse than rain. I mean, because for us hairies, rain messes up our hairstyles. It makes us look a little bit bedraggled. Whereas I think hail would be a little bit worse to suffer through.
Yeah, I mean, I have to deploy a guttering system though when it rains. Otherwise, it's just goes everywhere.
A guttering system. Okay, yeah. I mean, it's good to know that this business wasn't selling Merkins, because otherwise that would be an entirely different sort of like set of arguments, wouldn't it?
Oh,
But look,
dear John, you naughty. We don't know if they were, to be honest. All we know is that it was a system, and it turns out it was more of a service than it was a good anyway. So obviously there must be some installment of said product, which was, yeah. Well, anyway, we don't know. The fact is that it's not a disability, even though for some people it does impact on their ability. It's not the same for everyone. But
What ability does it impact?
well, if you're a woman, it was cited that they can recognise, they see it's not considered, hair loss in itself is not considered a disability, but that it is in some cases like cancer treatment, etc. That there's, it's something that can impact on their ability.
I can completely understand that as someone, as knowing a few people who've been through cancer treatment, and also people that have suffered from alopecia. I can fully understand the value, probably more to women than maybe to men, in terms of the value of having your hair back and growing, etc. But I'm not entirely sure it's hair loss as a disability is a big issue, unless it might be advantageous for Ryan, because he'd be able to park on double yellow lines and get closer to the office and things.
Exactly. And at least, if it's zero rated, it's cheaper for us, and we need the support.
Anyway, I have to end on this one thing. Whoever wrote this article, David Tipping, absolutely brilliant use of a pun. Every other line is practically a pun in this article. Tip-top conditioner, at first brush, hair comes trouble, brain weave, time to pay. He is just a genius. I really appreciate a good pun. We were talking about John's clubbing antics.
We were, yeah. He's old school.
Yeah.
He uses a wooden one.
Wooden club. That's how he gets the girls.
I whittled it myself from a fallen tree.
He's like, John, do you want to go clubbing, John? Do you want to go clubbing? Yeah. Doof.
I'll just get
little sack over the head, and then you never let them out, and they have to make you tea and gravy for the rest of their life.
Tea and gravy. This is clearly why I needed this unsolicited romance advice from Ryan Pearcy.
Why don't you give me unsolicited romance advice, Ryan?
Why don't I? You don't need any, Indy. You've got it down.
Because Ryan's unsolicited romance advice consists of real science. That's why I didn't give it to you, Indy.
Well, actually, did you verify it? Because I stated that and then did think, is it science?
The guy who's written it's got a PhD.
There you go.
Hang on a
minute.
You
can go read it then.
Did you check the source then?
I did check the source, and I did one of the quizzes, and then I didn't pay $39.99 to pay for the rest of it.
Oh no,
so real science costs you money, is what we're saying. Fair enough.
Real science costs you money. Real science, you don't feel ripped off when you use it.
Did you find out which of the love languages relate to you then?
I did, yes. Yeah.
Are you willing to disclose in a recording?
And now for some exclusive accounting news. John's love language is...
I think this is the only time I've ever seen John be tentative about saying anything.
It was all about physical touch and a physical touch, and then affirmation was the second one.
Oh my gosh!
Words of affirmation.
John, we're the same.
I know. Isn't that horrifying?
I'm different. I am physical touch, but it was acts of
service, isn't it?
Acts of service. That's it. Yeah.
Oh, so if we do stuff for Ryan, then he'll feel special.
It's because I'm always doing the stuff, you see. So if you do some stuff back, it makes me feel nice.
Yeah, we give you emoji responses to your messages. Come on, what more do you want?
Does it for me.
I want a response to my message with words.
That'd be nice.
I mean, given that we are the same, indeed, next time we meet each other and have a hug, that's going to be a bit weird, isn't it? Especially if I whisper in your ear and go, "Oh, that's really good."
Oh, you're so great, John. You're so lovely. Well done. Good job.
I love the way there was the different styles there. The northern and the southern approach in the way they say it.
I mean, to be fair, if you like acts of service, Ryan, you should make use of Indi's dungeon. Get someone locked up down there. You can do
I
stuff
don't
there.
have a dungeon. It's a wine cellar.
It's not a wine cellar. It's a wine cellar.
You don't have any wine in it.
That's true.
It's where she goes to
got-
wine.
You've got, or people in there that are whining, trying to get out.
You're clawing at the walls.
Please let me out, James. Promise I'll be good.
I mean, I'm surprised to see Lee in person today, given that you've let him out.
That's true. He gets 1 day a month.
It's because Lee is exceptionally good.
He's very well behaved.
Really very good.
You can't even see the marks on his wrist.
That's
You know
makeup.
what? Don't even try it. At least I don't force them to make tea and gravy the whole time.
What?
Dennis from
Who has
Tea and
gravy in their tea?
It's John, it's Northern, into a rock.
Tea and gravy?
And gravy. That's what he means.
What? No, wait, no. What does that mean? Are those things that you have tea, which is a meal, and you can have gravy at tea, but you don't put gravy in a cup of tea. So where's the tea and gravy bit?
I mean, there
Nice.
was a gravy wrestling championship happening up here over the weekend. We'll just put it out there.
See?
Did
They like
you
their tea
attend?
and they like their gravy.
I did not attend, although I have attended in the past. I've even
To
thought about participating.
compete?
with
Thought
all
about
that,
it, and then you saw the budgie smugglers you'd have to wear and decided against it. Is that the...
Well, you do get points for outfit as well as winning the
Do you?
bouts and for style, etc. So yeah,
So what is in, like, if you're dressed as a teapot and you do it, that
or
kind
a
of...
chicken or whatever. Yeah.
chicken.
I think there was someone dressed as a horse.
Should that be two people dressed as a horse?
Yeah. Having thought about that, yes, but the outfit strangely worked, so I'm not really sure how that happened.
Kind of satisfies your love language as well, if you think about it, because you get your physical touch in there.
Yeah.
You get people cheering you on. Yeah, actually,
Yeah.
I think maybe this is a new hobby for you.
It's a different kind of gravy at the end.
Like sort of.
Bit of gravy wrestling, eh, John?
Yeah, I mean, it's
Right.
one step up
Hello?
from voyeurism, isn't it?
I'd come up, I'll cheer him on.
Yeah.
I might have to look the other way whilst doing it, but I'll cheer him on. Are we broken indie? I think we're broken indie. Oh
Got
dear.
images flashing behind their eyelids.
Keep
which
getting
you can't
like
eradicate.
visions of John dressed as a giant sausage. Gravy slung at him.
Chips. I should be dressed as like chips. That's right, like a giant chip, and then you could like throw cheese on me because then it'd be really northern.
Oh,
Chips.
and we
Chips,
would
right,
really
cheese.
cheer you on for that. Go on, John. We can't wait to
Well, that's it. We wouldn't just cheer. We'd be at the side throwing cheese, grated cheese at him. That's how much we'd be cheering.
Grated cheese.
Yeah.
We are joined today by Phil Hobden on the latest episode of Digi-Tools in Accrual World, myself and John Toon. Phil has been in the community for donkey's years and probably deserves an award in his own right, because you have, at least recently, been a great service to probably more than most in the industry, setting up this AccountTech Forum as well, Phil. So before we talk anymore, just how are you, Phil?
Yeah, I'm really good. I am very, very happy to be here. It's been I joked that this was like one of the last things on my industry bucket list, right? Like was to be on this podcast. So that's it. I'm out tomorrow. When this episode goes out, I'm done. So this is my official. No, I'm not really, but I'm genuinely happy to be here. I am, of course, a fan of the podcast. I often listen to it in the most random places. I will listen to it when I'm running. I will listen to it on the train. I once listened to it. This is going to sound really weird. I probably shouldn't share this. I wanted to listen to it whilst I was in the bath, and then I was like, I had to turn it off because I felt weird. It was like I could just hear John's voice while I was in the bath, and I felt really uncomfortable.
I do that all the time, actually. It's really great to listen to John's voice while you're in the bath. It sends you to sleep, Phil.
I just felt really uncomfortable. I was like, this is just a weird thing. Like, I think it was John talking to Tony, and I was just like, no, I know them both too well to be sat here in a bath listening to the both of them.
You just wished we
Sweet.
were both there. That's what it was.
That was why I felt left out. I felt alone. That's the truth.
Felt alone.
You were there, but you weren't close.
Talking about felt alone, I'm going to jump in just because I asked John to ask this question. But talking about felt alone, you used to work. You've had quite a coloured, checkered sort of patchwork, checkered, colourful patchwork quilt of
sordid past.
Yeah, not a sordid past. Tell us actually. So because you started how long ago, Phil, and where were you? What's your kind of lineup of?
I think it's about like 19 years ago. But I started with I used to be in banking and finance, right? Like I had my own company. I ran it for a while in the film and TV industry, and it got to the point where it was getting harder and harder to make money in it. So I decided to get a real job, and I ended up in banking. I was like, this is a job for life. And I took a job in banking just after the financial crash of 2008 with NatWest RBS Group, which is like cross and double cross. And I think it got to the point where I've been made, my team have been made redundant 3 or 4 times, like different teams. And you go into a new team and they've been made redundant. And I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. It's not fun. So I answered an advert in a local newspaper for a company in Brighton looking for salespeople. And I was like, I'm a salesperson. I can do that. And I went and saw Helen at Futurely. And after like about a 20-minute chat, Helen said to me, "You'll never have to wear a suit again, and you get to work on a MacBook." And I was like, "I am in. Where do I sign?" And I was like, "And do I get to wear shorts in the summer?" She goes, "You can wear whatever you want." And I'm like, "Oh my God, like this is my dream." I went home, I ripped up the shirts, ripped up the suits, threw them all in the bin, and I never looked back from there. And I started with Futurely, with them through their Series A, and then moved to Capitalize, and was there for quite a while, all through the pandemic. So kind of those weird days, and like having to kind of redo everything we did during the pandemic, because I was training and educating accountants around finance, right? So we were doing it on site. We had a high touch kind of approach. It was great. I was always going around the country. We couldn't do that. So I literally had to rewrite everything overnight and deliver it remotely, which was cool. Like in a way, it was a weird challenge. Like I'm still working. The accountant's still working. We can still do this. How? And then I went to work for BCH. And after a short stint there, I've done a couple of contract jobs. So I went to work for 6 months at Knowit, and now I'm at Silverfin. And, obviously I know you guys know the Silverfin team well. And actually, if I'm being honest, I think I can share the story, John. You're probably part of the reason why I'm here, because I ran into you and our CEO LMH at the Fab event earlier this year. And that sparked a pretty interesting conversation and a pretty quick turnaround. And soon I was part of the Silverfin team. And really enjoying it here and doing a slightly different role to normal here, bringing my commercial approach to the product side. So that's kind of my career in a maybe not so short nutshell.
I think the one thing that's true about me, Phil, is that I'm very good at recognizing desperation when I see it. So
absolutely, you saw that in me. You saw that look of John, help me. John Toon, you are my only hope. You are my Princess Leia.
That's a frightful thing for everyone.
Phil, he doesn't need any more smoke blown up.
I had to share a ski cabin with him earlier in the year, and like my favorite John Toon story is and I think this is actually a nice story, right? Like I had an interesting week skiing on the Flinders trip. I'd never skied before. I managed to make my knee go in a direction that clearly knees should not go in. But I powered through because I'm a moron. And on the last day, it was just me and John, and obviously John is probably one of the better skiers there by far, and I'm probably not. And I said, and John's like, "Well, do you want to have a ski down from the top to the bottom?" And I was like, "Okay, this would be interesting." But it was really fun. It was like a really cool skiing down the hill because John pushed me just enough to for me to keep going and kind of want to kind of keep up, but he didn't kind of hoon it down and make me look ridiculous and make me kill myself. So I always have that, like, it was always good. And then, so at this point, basically, John, what I'm saying is I probably owe you a beer. And that's it. That's all the only nice things I'm saying about you now. We're done.
Phil, he does a similar thing for us on the podcast. So let's give him a little bit of credit on that because he does a good old interview. Thank you, John.
I've heard many of them in the bath, clearly.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, Phil, you've helped a couple of businesses in those early stages sort of grow and expand and things, and then move from I guess two sort of relatively embryonic businesses to two much more established businesses. One certainly much more than the other in terms of CCH and Wolters Kluwer. I guess what was your reflection on those different experiences? Because I see other people in the industry who do maybe make that move from a small growing fintech or accounting tech business and move to something much bigger, and then almost hate it overnight because it's too slow, too set in their ways, not dynamic enough, maybe not innovative enough. And so how do you feel about having worked at sort of 4 different places with very different experiences, I guess?
Yeah, do you know exactly that, right? Like I went from a small business to a small business with future to capitalize, to just touching Series A or around Series A, and that dynamicness of the business is great. And I went to a bigger business, and I struggled a little bit in terms of kind of bringing my approach to that business. And part of, you look at, you reflect back, and if you're being honest, you go, part of that is me. I didn't maybe bend quite as much as I needed to, but equally the business probably didn't bend enough and kind of encourage that. So I walked out of that, and that's why I took a 6-month contract with Know It, because I was like, I need to kind of find what I want to do. And clearly that was not it. It wasn't the right fit for me. So when I started to have the conversation with Silverfin, actually for me, it's that perfect middle ground where it is a big company. We were acquired by Visma for a substantial sum of money, but actually we're still Silverfin. We're still 100 and X amount of people. And then if you look at the UK side, it's an even smaller part of that. And the UK side definitely feels like that futurely capitalized, but with just that wider infrastructure that you can call on to get help and support. So I kind of think at the moment I've probably got the best of both worlds, where I've got the everything that larger company gives you, but with that flexibility and kind of ability to have some freedom and some creativity within it. So it's probably a good land for me.
Yeah, and is that maybe and I don't want to be overtly critical about any business, but is that maybe a criticism of Wolters Kluwer in terms of they're a big business just like Visma, but they haven't got that same kind of your approach to running a team in the UK compared to running a team in other parts of the world?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I think like you, right? Like I reflect back on my time there, and I did some really cool stuff, and like it's helped my career a lot to get that badge on the CV. I think I definitely think that you have to be a certain type of person to gel with that kind of culture, right? And certainly the one thing that I will say is I think, and it probably comes from the US nature of being quite delicate and careful around how they go to market and their approach and what you can and can't say. And I think maybe Visma and Silverfin have a bit more of a European approach to that, which I think is probably a bit more open. And you see some of the stuff that, like, I spent some time getting to know some of the people at Visma, and there's some phenomenal businesses over there. But they're all doing things in their own way, and they're all quite unique, and they're operating as their own businesses. They just happen to be part of this wider group. So I think you're probably right. I think there's probably a wider cultural thing from being a US business to a European business. And I think within that, then there's my culture and how I slot into a business. And like, I like to have a bit of freedom, a bit of creativity. Yeah. And I think I work best when that's encouraged.
Yeah, that makes sense. And talking about creativity and freedom, I mean, you set up the sort of the AccountTech Forum, which I think Indi's part of, and I know us accountants are excluded from it, so we don't get to play in your sandpit, or whatever. But what was the reason for creating that? Because I guess, was it a frustration about a lack of communication between sort of apps and vendors?
Yeah, partly. It's twofold, right? I was part of another networking group, a paid networking group. And when I went to Wolters Kluwer, I was excluded from that group because of one of their leading players was from Iris. So I couldn't, at that time, go back into that group. And one of the things that group really gave me was the ability. Exactly, right. And one of the things that group gave me was the ability to contact senior people in other businesses just on Slack, right? So I could message someone that worked at Xero, I could message someone that worked at Iris or whoever it was, just on Slack. And invariably they would get back to me because they knew me, we had that relationship. And that's a really valuable thing when you're trying to unblock stuff. So I was like, okay, I can't be part of that. So can I build something that has a similar ability to connect people, but actually it's not a side hustle for me. I don't want to make money out of it. I don't have the time to run something that has, if you want to make money out of something or you want to charge for something, it has to have a level, as you guys know, right? You have to have a level of engagement and involvement. And I'm like, I don't have the time to run that. But what I can do is connect people together. And clearly I found very quickly there is a need in this industry for people to connect together and share ideas. And look, the accountant thing's weird. It's got a bit weirder over the last 6 months where we've got people that are tech accountants and you're like, okay, we're kind of stepping the line a bit and we maybe need to like look at it a bit wider. But in terms of like, it's absolutely not a place where vendors go in and complain and bitch and moan about accountants, right? It's a place where we go in. They should, yeah. But it's a place where we generally go in and try and solve problems. Like, I'm seeing this, or I need help with this, or actually, who can support me on this? And everyone gives their time and gives their input really, really well. And I think it's created a community of people that are happy to give time to others. And for instance, like if someone's looking for a job, they'll post it in a hiring channel and people will kind of go, actually, I know we're hiring, or I know someone's hiring. And I know probably 7 or 8 people that have got jobs directly from just having that backdoor channel before a job's maybe even gone more public. And that's kind of cool, right? So you can help each other. And for me, it's just worked because it just helped me build an incredible network of people I can call on if I need it.
Yeah. And what challenges have you faced with that as well? Because like you say, it's not a full-time job. It's sort of a bit of a side show, as it were. But yeah. You know, I mean, you know, we have Slack channels connected with what we do, and you know, encouraging people to engage can be challenging sometimes. Making sure that you know there's a level of sort of consistency, etc. You know, you've got to set the ground rules, I guess.
Yeah, early days, right? Like I always go by the nature of trust, right? And I go, this is a kind of Chatham House rules environment, right? Like we can talk openly, fairly, but openly. There was one incident, and I don't mind sharing it, right? Like I won't go into the full detail, but something got back out of that channel that caused someone, and that someone was me, quite a few issues. And it put me in a really awkward position. I learned from that and I went, maybe we need to just think about who we're inviting in and how we're doing it and kind of, but other than that, it's like engagement and stuff like that, right? Like people will engage when they've got something to engage with or engage for. And that becomes quite tough because then it becomes quite one-sided. So it's trying to make sure it's a two-sided thing that you not only take, but you also give.
Yeah. And is that one of the things where you do sort of like fairly regular like Zoom catch-ups and stuff? Was that something you always did from the start, or was that something you've done more recently to kind of encourage that engagement?
That was a Sam Horner thing, right? So I've kind of set this up with Sam and Billy from 2020's come in as well to help us, because certainly, you know, if you've got 2 middle-aged white guys running something, it probably doesn't lend brilliantly from a perspective. And it's right, like you need more diversity of thought, more diversity of approach, more diversity of opinion, right?
Well, so it's good to know that Billy's ticking the indie box there. That's what we have indie for as well.
I thought to myself, I know exactly where John is about to go with this, but you just remember indie is the reason we established this, not the other way around. I recruited my 2 middle-aged white guys, okay? I recruited them.
And actually, being super fair, like absolutely, that's not the reason Billy's in there. Billy's in there because she came to us and said, "I want to be more involved in this." And we were like, "Actually, we want people to be more involved, and we want someone that can to come in and have a really good impact, bring something to it that's also kind of like brings a different perspective,
brings some energy as well, right?"
Yeah, and brings some, yeah, absolutely right. So it was right that it came from just me to me and Sam, and then to me and Billy, and but Sam came up with the idea of doing the kind of quarterly catch-ups or monthly catch-ups, and it's just nice. It's just like we get on and we just talk about a topic, and that topic can be like events have been a huge topic this year, right? Like event fatigue and then, feast and famine. So we spent a lot of time discussing that and how we can get the most out of that after events and in the more fallow periods.
Yeah. So what are the sort of the top 3 sort of burning issues that the group are machinating about at the moment?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's always the same thing, right? Like how we can be better at delivering to accountants. I think that's all of our core mission. So one of the things that we're doing is trying to work out the problem of adoption. So because selling to accountants has never been hard, really. If you've got a product that kind of does what it says on the tin, someone out there will buy it. There's enough accountancy firms out there, right? If you've got a good product, and sometimes even, maybe if the product isn't brilliant, people have bought it in the past, right? But adoption is a huge issue. So that's one thing. Probably the second one, and I think this is something that's come up recently, is issues vendors are facing around events, and not at events, but actually behavior at events. And that's a much more awkward conversation, right? Because because I'm of a certain privilege that it doesn't ever impact me, right? But certainly it's become very clear from one person mentioning it that there's some inappropriate behavior that happens at some of these events, right? Like people overstepping the mark, and the majority of vendor teams are quite young as well. So putting people in, whether overtly or inadvertently, into uncomfortable positions and not making them feel comfortable, then you add alcohol and everything else to the mix, and so it's coming clear that that's something that as an industry we need to be much more aware of. And the good thing is, the vendor group probably represents 70 plus companies, maybe 80. So there's now 80 vendors out there that are going to be far more aware of what's happening on other stands with other people, and to look out for it and actually make sure that we can call it out, and where it's not being called out by other people, we can actually say, look, that behavior is not appropriate, it needs to stop. And I've seen it, I've been abused at an event, right? It happened to me once. I just brush it off because I'm old enough where, I've been called enough names under the sun that you don't really just go, wow, that's new. But if you're 25, 26 in the industry and you've got people inappropriately approaching you or whatever, that's not fair.
It's not always clear what the boundaries around inappropriate could be, because it really is down to the individual to set what is appropriate or inappropriate. And I think that it's really good that you have at least flagged or brought the awareness to it in the community. It was really interesting being, in the forum and reading it that day, because I've had a couple of very questionable incidents as a result of some of the events that we've gone to. One in the Scotland Highlands that disappeared after a couple of years.
That event, man. Honestly, we could do a podcast on that event alone, and some of the stories I've got are just unbelievable.
Yeah, and I think that one of them was, I was very fortunate to work with colleagues who witnessed and were very vocal to step in. And we enjoyed the fact that for all of the next year, we had a business card on the dartboard that you would get 100 points extra if you landed the dart on the business card for that particular gentleman. And then, there's been other incidents as well where I haven't known people, and I've met them all new in the industry, and actually I've had something occur. And what's been really great is, again, because of the nature of the vendor community, that people have, once I've at least articulated it, have stepped in to have the candor and call it out. And I love that. Yeah. And I think the fact that you've put it in the forum and someone has come up and said something about it, it will just hold us all equally accountable. And visibility is everything in this, in terms of being able to set the right tone.
Yeah, it is. It's easy when you mix alcohol and music and fun, and boundaries get blurred. And we've seen it. We've seen Xerocons that I'm sure many new relationships have started at Xerocon, and I'm sure some have ended, and I'm sure there might even be a couple of Xero babies out there from Xerocons, right? Let's be honest. There probably are, right? But
Xeron,
also
Xerons,
yes,
zeros.
Yeah, zeros, right? Like mini zeros. But at the same point, at these events, sometimes lines can be blurred, and it's our responsibility, be it like podcasters, whoever it is, right? And by the way, I'm not just saying that this is accountants to vendors, it's vendors to vendors, it's vendors to it goes three ways. I have a story which I absolutely won't share for legal reasons, but I was part of a business where one of the staff massively overstepped the line with an accounting event with customer, and we fired them the next morning, right? They literally were gone from the company. They also hysterically had to make their own way home from the business because they were meant to be getting from the event. They meant to be getting a lift, so they were like, "Bye," and you can make your own way home. So it's on all sides. So it's on everyone to call it out. But people just need to be aware that this happens, and lines are there to be drawn.
And I guess that's one of those things, as you say, it's been talked about. Obviously in the vendor community, as you said, but probably needs to be spoken about more in our community. And I guess if you kind of look at things like the list that Dermot does, like the list of influencers, if you like, in our space, the vast majority of them are very high profile women, predominantly. Certainly more than men, and to a degree, I guess they need to be looked out for as much as anyone else.
And do you know what? Like we need to normalize being able to share stories as well, and like allow people to have that space, because at the moment I think it's that thing that there's an undercurrent of it. And I was surprised when we started talking about it in that group, how many people kind of said, well, actually I know someone, or I've seen this, or I've helped this, and you kind of go, man, like I knew it was obviously going to happen. It always does, but that's really that it's that prevalent, and it's still happening that recently with everything that's been going on. I think it's just a good thing to be aware of, right? Like with everything, we have to be aware of so many things these days, and the world's a much more complicated place than it's ever been.
Yeah, agreed. I've had issues as well. So
Yeah, sorry, John. I apologise in the hot tub. That was definitely inappropriate.
Those bubbles were unexpected.
Oh dear.
So I think there was two. I think there was two issues. Is there a third one that we can squeeze?
That's a good point. What was the third one? I mean, obviously we've covered off those two. I think the third one in general has been events, right? Like that's been the huge topic of conversation, and controversially, I want to use an expression, vendor gouging, as something like where it's like like the surge pricing for Oasis has definitely been a topic of conversation, right? Like I think whilst we're not seeing the same thing, if you compare events in this industry to events outside of this industry, sometimes you will be surprised at the difference in pricing and everything else, right? And I think we are not, I wouldn't say we're in a bubble, probably are, right? But certainly if you look 5 years ago or 6 years ago, the amount of money that was flowing into this industry from VC and equity was huge. And now it's slowing down a bit, but, we've set quite a high bar of, accountants are coming to events and they're expecting to walk away with 500 quid's worth of freebies, right? And actually now we're saying as a community, well, do we genuinely get any value from giving away £500 worth of stuff? Does it make us any more profitable, or do we close more sales? Has anyone ever actually bought a product for a water bottle? Or is it like what happened at one of the events this year, where I genuinely saw someone walking around with a portable trolley with five vendor bags stuffed full of stuff? And you kind of go, I think from a sustainability perspective, that has to stop. Yeah. But from a spend perspective, we have to make the events have an ROI, and they have to be sustainable from a finance perspective and an eco perspective, right? And I think we're almost at that cusp where maybe they're not. There's too many. They're too close. Now people are going, well, do we go to this one and this one, or do we do all of them, or do we do one? Yeah. Where are we putting our money? And some key vendors that I've known for years are now not going to certain events and missing out certain things and really targeting or shortening their presence. And at the same time, they're kind of like going, well, we're not going to take as much swag, and we're going to really kind of just give it to our customers. because we want people to engage with us for the right reason. We don't want to get a bag scan, give you loads of money in terms of freebies, and then spend 6 months chasing you for you to turn around and say no before you've ever given it a shot, right? Like, so I think that sustainability thing, both in terms of financial and environmental, is something that's becoming much more of a concern.
And I'd agree. I mean, I'd agree as an attendee, you know, as you know, I guess in the early days of going to conferences, yeah, it was great going up to the stands and going, oh, there's a water bottle, there's a T-shirt, there's a pen, God knows what, you know, socks, T-shirts, hoodies, hats, footballs, all sorts of things. But I kind of got over that, you know, like I mean, my intention with events now is really just to network more than anything else. And if I get lucky enough to be asked to speak as well. But it does feel like there are too many to attend as well in terms of like the numbers. And we're making the same decisions as a business as well in terms of like how many should we send to event X versus event Y, which is the following month. Do we get a return on investment for the train travel, the hotel, everything else that goes with it? And where are we best placed in terms of sending teams and everything else? And you know, I was very lucky this year in terms of, you know, I went to pretty much every event going. But that
globally, I've heard, like, not just the UK, like yeah. Toon International Man of Mystery this year. Well, not mystery, more like International Man of Not Mystery.
Yeah, but not missing it, FOMO, that's what it is. But I mean, I guess part of the reason for me going to the events was really because I was then taking teams to those events and showing them around, showing them the ropes and stuff. But will I do that again next year? Probably not, is the reality, particularly if we're going to have the same stack of events over the top. And I guess going back to your point about, you know, swag and sustainability and everything else, is like the stuff that I really like now is the stuff that, you know, people like Circuit and, you know, I think Sage and a few others have been doing, where you get like, you know, these little, you know, flower bombs or whatever that you can chuck in the garden. You know, I've got water bottles and coffee cups and things coming out of my ears. Like don't get me wrong, I like a good T-shirt, I like a pair of socks and things like that, because, you know, they're consumable.
I'm the king of T-shirts, right?
But all the other gimmick, you know, the pens and the pads, like I'm out. I don't need those. All the other random stuff, like, is just, you know, unless it's unusual, I'm just not interested at all.
Like how many wireless, how many, like, I think there was a year where everyone did power banks, and I think I walked away with like about 8 power banks. So I'm like, yeah. I'm like, look, I've got a 14-year-old daughter. She used to like really benefit from these events, but it gets to a point where I'm just like, I just can't, like, it becomes silly. And you're right, like, how many water bottles do you need? Like, I remember one year Go Cardless did a great thing where, like, rather than take merch, you scan the QR code, and like if you scan the QR code, you got a tree donated or something. You know, it was like, you know, so there was a real sustainability approach. And like, look, I'm not like Mr. Eco plant a tree, right? Like, but I'm just conscious that like I can sometimes go to some of the bigger events. Like I kind of think, how much of this stuff goes in the bin at the end of it? Like the stands and stuff, right? So, but yeah, from an accountancy firm perspective, also like weirdly as a vendor, I'd rather you send different people like to every event, because that way we can then be sure over like 4 or 5 events we get a mixture of senior people and more junior people. The worst case for any vendor is when you go to an event and you go, oh look, it's the exact same people that were there. Like even in Scotland, like the 5 people that actually turned up to the event were people I already knew. There's like, it's like, so you traveled up to Scotland to the worst accountancy event in the world, and you're at AccountTech's last week. What? It's like at least don't go to Scotland. But yeah, like, you know, it's huge. Like, you know, some firms send like 10, 20 people to an event. Like billing time, travel time, expenses, everything else is scary.
It is, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's the great thing about what you're pointing on, or what you're pointing out and touching on, is there is a shared philosophy amongst the vendors, and I think it's great that at least there's a forum for it now that didn't exist before, and you've managed to at least encourage more collaboration and connection from other people in different, even competitive companies. There's still a sentiment that says, well, we're all in this together, so let's at least make sure that we're not doing anything that really doesn't work in the best interests of the accountants. Because the one thing that I'd say that this industry has seen is that accountants have been more willing to share their knowledge with other accountants and learn about digital transformation and collaborate. And I love the way that the AccountTech Forum is also doing the same. It's allowing for collaboration in the same way that the accountants have done for the last few years. So hats off to you on that.
Oh, thanks. And I think it's important, right? Like, I think, but you're right. And the other thing that you become acutely aware of is accountants do talk, right? Like, we've seen that over the last couple of years. Like, when certain apps, it became clear that their pricing strategy was fluid, shall we say. It was, it was talked about and it became a big thing. And, if we can avoid stuff like that by talking together, and I'm not saying like I can influence Xero or anything like that. Clearly you can't. But what we can do though is we can kind of learn from mistakes and get access to some of the people that help with stuff like that and how do you deal with it. And we can maybe make it less of a mistake. Your point about accountants, by the way, like one of the things I've loved about Silverfin is I don't think I've ever worked with a business that's so close to its clients and customers, and like the feedback we get on the product and the conversations we have are just phenomenal, and the giving of time to make the product better. So a product that they love, that we can make that even better. I think that's awesome. And so I think it's one of the reasons why I've always loved working in this space. Working with accountants is like, it's really good. Like, you get really interesting feedback, you get really interesting conversations, you get really interesting challenges. And occasionally, when you have only been in the industry for 3 months and you phone someone in January, you get a really interesting life lesson as well. I won't tell you the words the certain accountant used, but certainly he told me to go somewhere because it was January and I wasn't aware of that. So, every day was a school day in the early days.
That's why January is for skiing, Phil. See?
I've learned this, right? I'm doing it all right this time now. I think there are accountants on the trip, brilliant. Some of them are actually my clients, even better. I can get to go skiing with them, brilliant. And I don't have to make sales calls for those couple of weeks. I mean, it's an absolute win-win for me, right?
Yeah. Well, there we go. There we have it. Phil Hobden, the man, the legend. I thought it was John Oakley, but clearly not. And
it's just a horrible myth that we're the same person. But it's very rare to sit in the same place at the same time. And AI photographs are amazing at making it look like we're different. I mean, we are different, clearly.
Yeah. Okay, you keep saying that. But thank you very much, Phil. Thank you for joining us. It's been great to hear a little bit about what your experience and what you're doing at the moment, and also the network that you've created and things. And long may that continue. And of course, we will see you at more events and more things going on, and keep in touch and everything else. But there you go. What a fab interview.
And thank you both very much. I made it, finally. I made it.
For God's sakes, Phil, stop being such a soldier. We've been asking you on for so long. Made it.
Like, I'm literally, there's literally a chain of messages between me and Indy on LinkedIn saying, can I come on yet? Can I? I'm not begging or anything, but please, I'm feeling left out. You've literally interviewed everyone in the industry and I'm the last person you haven't spoken to.
I wonder what it wants to me.
So untrue. That is so, we've got a lot more to go, Phil. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. That was fun.
Thank you for listening to another Digi-Tools and Accrual World podcast. Please, as we ask every time, if you like this, give it a follow, check out our YouTube channel, and make sure you're subscribed or following us on LinkedIn, mostly because you'll get to see the live streamed show of our Digital Disruptor Awards. If you want to be there in person, check out our website and buy a ticket. We'd love to see you, meet you, and potentially get you to participate in the events that go on throughout the night. And if you are an app or want to be involved and want to sponsor, reach out, drop us a message. There are still opportunities to get involved. Once again, thank you for listening. We'll catch you next time. All right, let's stop that shizzle.
My word.